Good morning, everybody. I think we're good on quorum for study agency, so I'm going to pass it over to Chair Mendez.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Good morning and welcome to our meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Study Agency. We have board members participating in person at our office in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Modesto. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here are a few important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices such as cell phones. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be muted once they are recognized to make public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. The clerk will recognize any public attendee who has indicated they wish to speak. Madam Clerk, you want to do roll call?
Yes, good morning. Mr. Chiesa.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Couch.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mr. Mendez.
Here.
Mr. Pereira. Mr. Rickman. Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Shucklian.
Here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
So now we'll do the flag salute. Mr. Rodriguez, you want to lead us?
Sure. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I wonder what the heck that was.
Oh, reverb.
Yeah. So we have election of officers for 2026.
My apologies. I think you have the wrong agenda. I'm going to run it up to you.
That's right.
Oh, okay. All right. So you gave me the wrong script.
Atta girl.
Okay. All right.
There you go. Swap it out there.
Okay, we have item number 4, which is approval of the consent calendar 8 through 10.
Move to approve.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Okay, I'm going to call for public comment on the
Okay.
consent calendar. Bakersfield, do you have any members of the public that would like to comment on the consent calendar?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments on the study agency consent calendar?
No public comment in Modesto.
Yes. Fresno, any members of the public? Seeing none and none online, I'll call for roll. Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Next item is public comment for the study session.
Okay, do we have any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment on the study agency meeting?
No comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comment?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment for the study agency meeting? Seeing none and none online.
Is there any governing board member comments? Hearing none. We'll move. It says on mine, other business. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, there's no other business.
There's no other business. So with that, we're adjourned, and I'll hand it over to our fearless leader,
Oh,
Amy Shecklian.
so we're off to our regular meeting. Deborah was here. Did she? Okay. All right. Well, good morning and welcome to our meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Governing Board. We have board members participating in person at our offices in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Modesto. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. The clerk will recognize any public attendee who has indicated they wish to speak. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Chiesa,
Aye.
Mr.
Here.
Couch, Ms.
Here.
Escutia Brayton,
Here.
Ms. Lewis,
Here.
Mr. McCauley,
Here.
Mr. Mendez,
Here.
Dr. Pacheco Warner, Mr. Pereira, Mr. Reyna, Mr. Rickman, Mr. Robinson,
Here.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Here.
Ms. Nguyen, Ms. Shecklian.
Aye.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is approval of consent calendar. These are items 13 through 20. These items are considered routine and are typically approved by a single vote. Before the board takes action, a member of the public will have an opportunity to comment on any item on the consent calendar. Do we have any public comment for the consent calendar?
Bakersfield, do you have any public comment for the consent calendar items?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comment on the consent calendar?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Fresno, do we have any members of the public for the consent calendar comments? Seeing none and none online.
Move to
Okay.
approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor McCauley and a second by Supervisor Mendez. Roll call, please.
Okay, also through the chair, it does look like Mr. Reyna has joined us.
Okay.
Mr.
Through the
Chiesa,
chair, Mr. Rickman has arrived.
Aye.
okay, Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs, Ms. Shecklian.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you. All right, our next item is public comment. This time is provided for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public are requested to reserve comments on agenda items 6 through 8 until those items are heard. Each of these items will include a separate opportunity for public comment at that time. Please note that state law prohibits the board from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Do we have anybody who would like to speak for public comment?
Okay, we'll call in Fresno. I do have somebody coming up to the podium.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board and staff. Manuel Cunha, President of the Farmers League. Over the last couple of weeks, the announcement by EPA upon interstate commerce happening, where trucks come in from other states, we've had growers, greatly concerned packers, that they were told that their trucks will be inspected or smog checked and have to pay a fee when that's in violation of the federal waiver issue 209E. So I'm greatly concerned about that, because if that decision is being made, what it's doing, it's causing tremendous havoc to our buyers in other parts of the country because of the delays of the product leaving California or even attempting to come into California, those trucks will be held up. And I believe under the statute, as the way I've read it, and I was part of that in 1990, 209E is a request for that waiver of that engine. And if it's denied, then the state has no authority to regulate those trucks. But the word that's out there by CARB is that they're going to force the law on their own premises. And I think we need to have some clarity of, because our farmers and packers can't have products not being held up at a weighing station or not allowed to come into California. So it's a mess out there. I've had probably in the last 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 20 calls from packers that are greatly concerned because of that issue. So I'm just bringing that forward because it's causing us a lot of havoc of what California Air Resources Board has taken a position to go ahead and violate the waiver denial. So thank you.
Are there any other public comments in Fresno? Seeing no other in Fresno, Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Bakersfield, do you have any public comments?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Does look like we have one online comment. Connie Young.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Connie Young, Fresno resident, retired registered nurse and volunteer for Citizens Climate Lobby, also known as CCL, and I also volunteer for the Earth Day Fresno planning team. Thank you for your generous donation to Earth Day Fresno, and special thanks to Jamie Holt for her ongoing support for this event. Earth Day Fresno will be held on Saturday, April 18th at Fresno City College. It will feature Fresno's first green home and garden show. Businesses that sell earth-friendly products or services can apply to participate in this event at earthdayfresno.org. One of the show's vendors will display a plug-in solar system, also known as balcony solar. These small, lightweight arrays can be hung from balconies or placed on the ground. They can help reduce electric bills for people who can't have a full-size solar system because they live in an apartment or for some other reason. Citizens Climate Lobby is responding to two recent developments. As you know, the EPA finalized its proposal to rescind its 2009 endangerment finding, which determined that climate pollution endangers public health. Without the endangerment finding, the EPA will lack clear authority under the Clean Air Act to regulate emissions from sources like vehicle tailpipes and certain industrial facilities. CCL's stance is that this decision demonstrates that regulations alone are not a reliable path to enduring climate solutions, since they and executive orders tend to shift with each new presidential administration. CCL will remain focused on working with lawmakers to pass durable bipartisan climate legislation that will drive the deep, long-term emissions reductions that are needed. Also, Congress is presently debating the next highway bill reauthorization package. Due to a longstanding and growing shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund, Congress will likely include a federal fee for hybrid and EV drivers, myself included, since we are not filling gas tanks or paying a gas tax. CCL members are asking Congress to keep any new EV and hybrid fee fair and comparable to the current gas tax. We need EVs and hybrids to remain a clean and affordable transportation option. We especially need clean transportation in our air basin to help reduce air pollution. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
Okay, seeing no further comments.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is an information item, and this is a report on the District Citizens Advisory Committee activities.
Good morning.
Morning, Manuel.
Cunha. Thank you, board chair and members of the board and staff. We'll make this fast because you got a short agenda and I don't want to be the one to.
Mess it, yeah.
So,
You just jinxed
first thing
it.
is, the board, Samir and staff received the Government Finance Office of Association Certificate of Financial Excellence in Reporting and a clean audit as well. So again, to the entire board and the staff and Samir, your team, congratulations, especially on the amount of incentive fundings that you have had to deal with and when those come in and go out. The second item that took a long part, not a long part, but a good part of the CAC was Mr. Les Clark. After 35 years, he helped with Senator McCorkindale develop this air district back in 91 with Kathy Reheis Boyd and myself. But Mr. Clark is sort of coming to stepping down a little bit. But they had a great presentation from Mr. Clark in Bakersfield. And that week was really bad in the fog. So some of us decided not to go down and stay here. But a great presentation of various people talking about his accomplishments with this air district and Bakersfield and everybody. So again, the CAC wanted to recognize him, and Samir had a very nice plaque. And one of the person brought a bunch of cake. So there was a bunch of goodies down there for Les and everybody. The next item was the ARB report. I want to let Dr. Pacheco know that your staff have done an excellent job in presenting materials to the board in a very outlined, which really makes it nice now for us to follow along and follow what's happening. So I want to commend your staff for doing that at ARB. And quite a bit of discussions, but at least we have documents in front of us so we can follow. So that was excellent. Samir also gave a report on some of the up-to-date issues on the ISR rule and the funding for the Clean Car Program of you folks receiving $12 million. And again, also the platform for reaching out to the governor's office and the legislature on the funding of the farmer for $200 million, the alternatives tag for 75, and then the Clean Car Program, 200 million. So we're all fighting to make that happen. But I do want to thank Samir and the staff and the board for the letters and the CAC for their letter supporting this great effort of getting these funds. In my personal comment, we should take the money out of the high-speed rail. That's me, not CAC. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Manuel. All right, our next item is an action item. It is to accept and appropriate $15,461 in additional revenue from the California Air Resources Board 2022 Climate Heat Impact Response Program. There you go.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Todd DeYoung, your grants program director. And just by way of a brief background on the Climate Heat Impact Response, or CHIRP program. It was established under direction in 2021 by the governor. And it was an issue that was a state of emergency proclamation to address extreme heat-driven grid emergencies and associated emissions from emergency power generation. So back in the summer of 2021, the California Independent Systems Operator, or California ISO, sorry about that, declared that there were heat-related grid stress, and it authorized the increased operation of backup generators and power plants to maintain grid reliability. Unfortunately, what happened was this resulted in emissions that were beyond normal permitted levels for those facilities. So under this proclamation in 2021, CARB was directed to develop a mitigation plan, a framework to offset those excess emissions, protect public health, and enhance community resilience, and particularly in disadvantaged and low-income communities throughout the state of California. So the CHIRP mitigation plan was born from that effort. This plan depends on 4 basic elements. And number one, the California ISO projects that shortfall in energy supply and issues that grid warning or grid emergency, depending on the severity of the issue. Under this proclamation, again, those emission requirements for these peaker plants and these backup generators are suspended to address that energy shortfall during that period of time. After the event is over, CARB gathers emissions data associated with the event, how much was generated over and above those permitted levels, and determines the funding needed to offset or to mitigate that event, mitigate those excess emissions that were produced. And then finally, once that amount is determined, CARB requests that funding from the Department of Finance and then distributes that by formula, which I'll discuss on the next slide, to local air districts to fund projects to mitigate those excess emissions. So 2022 was the most recent event. It was in August of 2022. So they released a memo just recently soliciting an air district participation in the 2022 CHIRP. This follows the CARB's implementation, as I showed you on the last slide, as a mechanism to mitigate those excess emission reductions associated with those extreme heat events. During this most recent event in 2022, it was determined that approximately $22.7 million in CHIRP funding was necessary, and this funding was tentatively allocated recently among 26 air districts that had reported qualifying CHIRP data. So the facilities in the district had reported their emissions that were above those permitted levels. That information where we didn't get reported information was supplemented by information from the CPUC and CEC to get a good understanding of the excess emissions that were generated during that time. So this formula that was developed by CARB uses 35% of the CHIRP emissions data that was reported, 35% air quality severity in the region, and then 30% is based on the district population. So based on that formula, the district has been allocated 13% of the total program funding, or about $2.97 million. The Air District has had an ongoing relationship with the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District on the Eastern Sierras. We have, for the past several years, had a relationship with them to administer their Carl Moyer program funds on their behalf because of their staffing issues there. So we've had a great working relationship with them. In this program, similarly, they elected to send their funding to us to administer on their behalf. So that added another roughly $40,000 to our total. So if you combine ours and the Great Basin's totals, it's just over $3 million that you see there. So how do we administer these funds? The CHIRP funds can be used to support any project eligible under our two sort of stalwart programs, the Carl Moyer program and the Community Air Protection program. It provides us with broad flexibility in project selection. It includes the full range of source categories, all of the on-road and off-road categories that we typically fund with Moyer program or CAP funds. Those are all eligible under this program. For those districts that don't have projects available, they would consider alternative proposals, and districts would have to submit those alternative proposals to CARB for approval. The CHIRP funds will follow all the administrative requirements outlined in the Carl Moyer program, so it's very consistent with funding that we receive and administer on a yearly basis. So upon approval today, the district will update our existing 25-26 incentive spending plan that was approved as part of the 25-26 budget to incorporate the funding. And we're planning to incorporate this into our highly oversubscribed and most cost-effective programs that we operate here in the district. For example, our tractor replacement program, which we have a significant queue of eligible projects. So with that, the recommendations are before you. I won't read them. They're in your packet. That concludes my brief presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You could have told me it was CHIRP before I read that whole thing out, but that's all right. Do we have any questions by board members? I don't see any. Oh, yes, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is, I understand that the funds that are going to be received are going into this umbrella of two different programs called Moyer and then other incentives. So do we have a way of representing how these funds are allocated? For example, projects, do we state somewhere? Do we promote that? Reason why I say that is because it becomes transparent if, in our case, we have a measure, right? We have a transportation tax measure that we have. And whenever roads are built, we said funded by such and such. This way, we're very transparent in the way we utilize those funds. Does the district have anything like that that can show transparency especially where you have more of the disadvantaged communities that are impacted by these heat emergencies that take place?
I'll take a stab at it. Todd, you
Please.
can jump in. The short answer is yes. I think it's a terrific idea and one that in the past, the board has been really vocal about making sure across different programs that we do a good job of communicating to the public. Number one, that we are reducing air pollution through the different projects. And number two, that it's through a collaborative partnership here with the Valley Air District. So they get to know, the efforts of the board and what we're trying to do. That takes different forms depending on the program and, sort of like the audience. There's a lot of, I think you've probably seen different outreach approaches that we use to try to celebrate the different successes. There's things, for example, like on every tractor we replace, there's a really big sticker, for example, that you see on there, and it's very clear, that it's a clean air project, that's funded in partnership with the Valley Air District. When we use climate investment funds, there's also additional acknowledgement of the funding sources that are part of that. We also just celebrate them through whether it's the annual report, we do press events, we do a lot of other things depending on the nature of the project to try to show that return back to the community in terms of the benefit of those projects. And we're always looking for more ways too, by the way. That's the other thing. It's a living kind of project in terms of how to do that. So as new ideas come in, it's always a great opportunity to have that conversation about how to promote that, which is a terrific principle that I think we've definitely tried to do more of over time. And I don't know if Todd, any other feedback on that?
I think you handled it great. Thank you.
I'll leave with this comment is that since during these situations of extreme heat, I know we lax the state laxes its emissions to try to get these generators back up and running. Therefore, obviously, certain areas are impacted. So when these funds are allocated for that, then I think for me, it's more to see how transparent we are in saying, here's the impacts, here's how we're going to cover that and mitigate for that, and here's how we're going to provide those programs. So I think you've answered that too. So thank you. Appreciate your answer. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Reyna. Good morning.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Based on your conversations with CARB and the program recent history, do we have any indication whether CHIRP may become a recurring funding source tied to future extreme heat events?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's our understanding that now that the program has been established, the framework has been established, that any future events will follow that same formula, those same principles to address any emissions that are generated during any extreme heat events.
And I would just add through the chair that I think the goal is overall goal would be to not have these just add a little bit more like the other side of the coin to have these types of events occur. I think the preference across the board would be for there to be minimal to no issues with the grid being able to provide enough power to provide the cooling and support basically needed during those heat episodes. There's been significant strides made since 21, 22 in terms of it's gotten better, I would say, just kind of looking at this issue summer to summer. Although, we do have to keep our eye on the ball as a state because there are also increasing strains on the grid. And, which is something that I think, so it's in place as a infrastructure to help deal with that. But I think also in recent years, we haven't seen that nearly as close as what happened back in 21, 22. And it is something that we'll just have to watch into the future and hopefully not see a recurrence of that.
Certainly, thank you. And I had a second question, but I believe you, Samir, you have already answered it. And that was, could you walk us through how the district will ensure that the CHIRP funded projects deliver real measurable emission reductions connected to the August 2022 heat event? And Samir, I think you answered that question thoroughly before.
Okay. All right, Dr. Sheriffs.
Thank you. And really adding to Mr. Reyna's compliments for the district in terms of the approach on this. There's obviously a lot of collaboration. Well, one rules weren't relaxed. Things temporarily needed to be relaxed in order to maintain the grid, which if that had failed would have been a huge disaster on so many fronts. But to recognize that there was a price to pay for that and not just say, well, that's then. No. We need to make that up in terms of the health effects for the population. So commending staff in terms of their work with CARB and the other districts for developing the program, for developing the formula for distributing funds. Very good work again. Very important, that collaboration throughout the other districts in CARB to get this done.
Thank you. All right, Supervisor Mendez.
How much the programs we're putting the money in, how much are they overprescribed right now?
So that's a great question. In the tractor replacement program, we've got just under $700 million in existing need. Those are applications that we have in-house. So this will go to address that shortfall to some extent.
I didn't know if everybody knew that was the case. And I didn't know the number is now that high, but I know we're not taking applications anymore, but.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, where's CARB getting this money exactly?
It's coming from the Department of Finance.
Okay.
Yeah, so directly from the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's how the federal government does it. They just print more money. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Robinson.
So I think Buddy asked part A of my question, basically just that Carl Moyer is drastically overdrafted. So, I mean, don't we have a case here, like Councilman Rodriguez was speaking, of course we want transparency, but we have to use the brakes sometimes and the accelerator other times in terms of promotion, right? Otherwise, we're going to set ourselves up for more disappointment. Is that accurate?
Yeah, if I understand, let me know if I'm not answering the question, but I think that yes, there are times, when you hit a certain point with over prescription that, you basically have to take a pause, which we did for the tractor replacement program. We have plenty of applications in-house, and you get to a point with some of the programs where if you have far nexus applications, you end up with, frustrated customers because maybe they're so deep in the process that, that it's really hard to envision at what point they're going to get funded. And so, it comes to, so we've seen that across some of our over subscribed programs, where we do have to pause at times. It is a testament to, I think, the program design and the outreach that we do and the service that we provide, that we see that much interest. These projects are very expensive. They're not 100% funded. They're split funding so people do have to bring in quite a bit of funding, often in situations where economics are not great, depending on, whether it's ag, the various commodities, or other situations. But there is, still a lot of value out there to residents. Public agencies are also a very big partner in that, or ag and other sectors that we deal with. But you are correct. There's a balance there of how much promotion you do to get applications. Now, we can never really over promote the benefits of the programs. And I think that's something that, is sort of the other piece of promotion, which I think is the other question, which is, it's always good, I think, to show the public, how these funds are being used, the benefits that are coming from these projects, and the resulting improvements in air quality at the end is really a big part of that as well. You'll hear a little bit about that later on the agenda with some of the updated figures for 2025. It's just really important that that's all communicated. I do want to also just acknowledge, and I think this come out, but CARB was definitely a big partner in making, the funding question that came up. There was some funding allocated to sort of energy related issues, and CARB did work really, really hard with us and other air districts to create sort of this source of funding, with a really good formula behind it that, was advantageous to our area, given our air quality challenge. And that was truly a partnership, and just want to acknowledge, appreciate that from their level as well.
Thank you. Okay, I see no more board member comments, so I will open this up for public comment.
Okay, Bakersfield, do you have any public comments on this item?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, and none online.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor McCauley and a second by, was that Dr. Sheriff? You got it. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Chiesa,
Aye.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
through the chair, motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, our next item is item number 7, and this is receive and file the district's annual air toxics report for 2025. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Seth Lane, and I'm a program manager here at the district in the Technical Services Department. And this is the annual air toxics report, as you said, and it's always good to start with a recap on what are air toxics. So quick background, the state and federal governments have identified over 1,700 substances that when suspended in the air can end up in your body through various pathways and can cause a risk to your health. These substances at sufficient concentrations and exposure can potentially impact human health. These impacts can vary, but when dealing with air toxics, we're talking about cancer risk, other long-term chronic health impacts, and short-term acute health impacts. Some of the more common air toxic examples are diesel particulate matter, benzene, hexavalent chrome, and formaldehyde. And these toxic pollutants are not the same as the criteria pollutants, those for which the EPA has established national ambient air quality standards like NOx and PM 2.5. But importantly, even small quantities of air toxics are distributed through the air we breathe, and they get created by a variety of sources from cars and trucks to industrial sources and consumer products. So to address air toxics in the Valley, the district operates a multifaceted, comprehensive program that addresses toxics on various fronts, and we refer to this program as the district's integrated air toxics program. And within that program, we combine local, state, and federal requirements under one umbrella. The first one to mention is that the district implements the state's air toxics hotspots regulation, and that addresses health risk from air toxics from existing operations in the Valley. But we also evaluate new and modified sources of air toxic emissions to make sure that we don't allow new health risk situations to be created from new or expanding operations. We implement a large number of regulations designed to reduce risk from air toxics on a facility basis as well. We assist land use agencies by providing our expertise related to addressing and mitigating potential air toxics from new development projects under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And last on the list here, which is a major component of our approach, are the clean air projects funded through the district's grants and incentive programs that have resulted in major emission reductions, such as toxics as well, such as diesel particulate matter. So to address air toxics from existing stationary source facilities, the district implements the state's AB 2588 air toxics hotspots regulation. And using the state's program guidelines, facilities submit plans and reports that characterize and quantify their air toxic emissions, which are then reviewed by the district. And using that information, the district performs a prioritization. A prioritization is a conservative screening level health risk assessment. The results of the prioritization puts facilities in one of 3 categories based on the potential the facility may have to create health risk. And the 3 categories are low, intermediate, and high priority. So low and intermediate priority facilities require no further assessment under the state regulation at that time. Intermediate priority facilities are required to submit updated toxic reports, information on an ongoing schedule for reevaluation, so they stay within the program. High priority facilities require further assessment as they may create a health risk. So to make that final determination, a more refined health risk assessment is required using complex and super conservative computer modeling of their potential to create a health risk. These health risk assessments, or HRAs, take into consideration the concentration of toxics in the air, the potency or toxicity of the chemical, the length of the exposure. It accounts for how the pollutant is emitted, such as the stack height and direction, exit velocity and temperature of emissions, wind direction and speed, and distance to the receptor location. And based on the results of the health risk assessment, a public meeting to inform the neighbors of the potential risk from the facility may be required. And the highest risk facilities have to make modifications to their operations to reduce the risk they're creating to a point where they're no longer at that level of risk. So this slide provides a summary of our recent work in the program. as we continue to assess facilities in the Valley. Since 2016, we have completed assessments for more than 7,900 Valley facilities through 2025. And of those, more than 5,700 are conditionally exempt under the state regulation from further assessment at this time. And more than 1,800 are intermediate priority facilities, which requires periodic update summary evaluations. And there are 160 high priority facilities that are currently being evaluated with a health risk assessment or will be shortly. The majority of these facilities, about 146 of these facilities, are auto body shops that were high priority, and there'll be more on this on the next slide. There were 184 high priority facilities that through a refined HRA, they were determined to be low or intermediate risk facilities. And all the facilities categorized as intermediate priority or risk have continuing emission reporting requirements under the program, and that's to ensure that a facility is reassessed if necessary. So as mentioned, we prioritized many auto body shops last year. The timing of the auto body coating shop assessment last year was due to them being phased into reporting under a few regulations. One, the state's CTR emissions inventory regulation, and also CARB's hotspots guideline schedule. So in 2025, we evaluated over 330 auto body shops under AB 2588. And out of those, as I mentioned, 146 screened as high priority. 186 fell into intermediate or low priority categories. So the reason many auto coating facilities were designated as high priority is primarily due to recently added risk factors by OEHA for certain substances. The main driver is a solvent called para-chlorobenzotrifluoride, or PCBTF, which is a very common solvent in automotive coatings. PCBTF was considered an exempt VOC by EPA because it doesn't contribute to ozone formation, so it's been widely used in coating formulations for several decades. Recently, though, OEHA established cancer potency and toxicity values for PCBTF. And once those health values became available, we incorporated them into our risk calculations. And that increased the calculated prioritization score for many of these facilities. So this doesn't mean emissions increased or that shops changed operations, since many of these facilities had been evaluated before. But the difference is that earlier assessments didn't evaluate risk from PCBTF because toxicity, the toxicity value for PCBTF didn't exist yet. So what we're seeing is updated scientific information, not new emissions. So as a district, we incorporate updated health risk values as soon as they're adopted by OEHA to ensure our program reflects current science and is health protective. In addition to PCBTF, other recent examples of toxicity values, just as a note, being updated by OEHA in recent times is 1,4-dichlorobenzene, isoprene, and hexamethylene diisocyanate, or HDI. So because intermediate facilities have ongoing requirements, the district continuously evaluates their emissions. These ongoing assessments are called update summary projects. In 2025, approximately 41 facilities were evaluated with this process. In 2026, we have approximately 700 update summary projects to process. We've enhanced the update summary process by using toxic weighted emissions, or TWE, which we've streamlined and integrated directly into our inventory database. This approach allows for a health protective screening evaluation of air toxic emissions and their potential health impacts. The TWE calculation utilizes the latest toxicity risk factors for each pollutant established by the state. It changes in facility emissions and then determines a resulting potential impact for the facility. And we perform this analysis for cancer, chronic and acute health risks on a toxic pollutant by pollutant basis. This ensures there's a comprehensive evaluation of all potential health impacts. And then based on these health protective findings, the district determines whether a new full AB 2588 assessment is required for each facility. So the previous few slides on AB 2588 were all about existing sources and their emissions. When we receive an application for a permit to operate, we analyze the potential health risks to determine if that operation results in an increase of air toxics. And we assist lead agencies in their analyses to do the same thing under CEQA. For stationary sources, we do this with a risk management review, or RMR. This process is similar to the prioritization process I described for hotspots, but for new and modified sources, we use worst case potential emissions since the equipment's not yet in operation. We perform this analysis for all proposed increases in air toxic emissions, and very health conservative worst case conditions are assumed in the models, such as the potential maximum allowed emission levels. We assume stagnant air conditions and long-term exposure. And if the operation can't pass the risk assessment with the best available control technology for air toxics, it's not an approvable project as proposed. So along with that, we also implement a large number of regulations that are aimed at specific types of facilities or operations to further reduce air toxic emissions in the valley. The district's responsible for implementing through our permitting and inspection processes, local, state, and federal regulations that reduce air toxics. The state regulations are called air toxic control measures, or ATCMs, and they apply to a fairly wide variety of sources, with a few mentioned on this slide here as examples. And the federal regulations are generally called NESHAPs, for National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutions. And with that, there are standards and controls for various sources, including aerospace coatings and wood preserving. So a key in the integrated program is the incentive grant program that brings about reductions in NOx and PM, but also achieve collateral reductions in air toxics as a result of the clean air projects. District has administered more than $7.6 billion toward clean air projects in the valley, resulting in significant emission reductions. There have been nearly 38,000 diesel engines replaced, resulting in significant reductions of DPM, which is critical to reducing the public's health risk. Through these incentive grant programs and other efforts mentioned here today to reduce air toxics in the valley, there's been a major reduction in cancer risk from breathing air in the valley. And one indicator of this success is demonstrated in CARB's 2023 California Air Toxics Assessment, or CATA for short. The CATA uses a detailed emissions inventory, meteorological data, and modeling. And the figures on this slide indicate a downward cancer risk trend in the valley from breathing air, where there has been a 55% decrease in cancer risk from air toxics from 2012 to 2017. And by the way, the information here is still the latest available. CARB was planning on releasing an updated CATA last year with new data, but the release has been pushed back again. So we're awaiting the new data to incorporate into our toxics report so it can reflect the latest available data. But as of today, the 2023 CATA is still the latest of a comprehensive study like this. It's an important reminder that based on the CATA, diesel particulate matter continues to be the primary air toxic contributing to the valley's cancer risk. And the primary contributor of diesel emissions in the valley is from mobile sources under state and federal jurisdiction. And as mentioned, and per the state's CATA assessment, DPM from mobile sources is the primary contributor to air toxic cancer risk in the valley, which totals more than 85% of the risk. And VSC has contributed a small portion of the risk there, including benzene and formaldehyde, which are emitted primarily from gasoline-driven light duty passenger vehicles. And then heavy metals also contribute a smaller fraction of the risk, including cadmium, nickel, and lead, which are emitted from miscellaneous mobile sources and certain industrial stationary sources. So related to emissions inventory, AB 617 required the state to develop a uniform statewide system of annual reporting of criteria and toxic emissions. And emission inventory data is critical to understanding emission sources and related health risk. So as a result, CARB created the regulation for the reporting of criteria air pollutants and toxic air contaminants, or CTR for short, which requires additional information from each facility on an annual basis. But facilities have already been reporting under the CTR for several years now. The district will continue to implement the requirements of the CTR for valley facilities by compiling the related data, quantifying and reviewing emissions data, and then sending the inventory data to CARB. The district also plays an important role to help businesses understand how to comply with air toxic rules and requirements. We work with applicants who need assistance in reducing their potential air toxic impacts from new sources of emissions, and we continue to assist land use agencies in the valley with their analyses to address air toxic impacts. And we continue to engage the public through community involvement as we implement the air toxics program. For instance, we work with community members to understand our role in the permitting process and to help them understand the concept of the conservative nature of health risk assessments. And another example of working with the community is we provide multilingual outreach, including notices of significant permitting action. So with that, we ask your board receive and file the annual air toxics report to the community and authorize staff to distribute the report and make it publicly available. And that concludes the presentation. So I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from board members? Yes, Rusty.
So basically, most of these are just recommendations, unless they're like a flagrant violator, right? In most cases.
So are you talking about AB 2588?
Yeah, so back to the auto body. And so my question is, so you mentioned a solvent PCBTF, I guess. So just for mitigation purposes, are there other solvents that they can use? And are they much more expensive? And then the last question is, do we offer incentives for that?
Yeah, I think to also try to answer your first question, yeah, the way the program is going to work for those facilities as with all other facilities that are going through the AB 2588 process. First, you understand the risk. You work with the facilities, and we have a really great track record. I have to say that our team here is really, really good at taking a close look at the facilities. We're hoping, that the conservative nature of the prioritization, means that as we look closer, that that there isn't going to be a large number of high risk facilities. But if there are, that trigger the notification threshold, the requirement under AB 2588 is that there's notification provided. Now, the means of that, the process for doing that is something that we're working through. This is a statewide issue, so there's a lot of work going on to think about, what does that mean for what can often be smaller operations? How do we basically work together, with those operations to meet, that requirement? That's sort of the regulatory piece on that. There is a threshold also above which you do actually have to reduce your risk to a certain level. But that's a lot less likely. And so we think more likely there may be some facilities that are at the notification level. And if there are, we would have to work very closely with them to do the notification, or which I think gets to your other question, we can work closely with facilities to also see what can they do to get their risk below even that level. And that does involve questions like, are there alternatives? We don't know the answer to that yet. I think there's going to be it really just depends, I think, also in the nature of the operation, what types of, there's actually a range of different types of operations. It's not just one type of auto body shop. So I think that is one emerging issue. Again, it's a statewide issue. It's not just here in the San Joaquin Valley. What are the alternatives? What sort of reformulations are the manufacturers already working on that provide those alternatives? What can they also be doing just differently in terms of how they operate, in terms of the building setup? And there's other factors, beyond just the coatings that they use. We can work on all these different things to try to reduce that risk below notification. But this is an emerging issue. I just have to note that this will take some time to really kind of work our way through that. And it'll require a lot of engagement, with not just directly with the auto body shops, but also just coating manufacturers, thinking about this with other regions as well, and coming up with a process that is logical and that is meets, the requirements of the law, while also acknowledging, that, this could be a fairly large number of facilities that are going to need some assistance in that process.
Not seeing any other questions from board members. I'll open it up for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this? Seeing none and none online.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion. Supervisor Mendez.
Second.
We have a second by Supervisor Robinson. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Chiesa,
Aye.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs, Ms. Shuklian.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
All right. Thank you very much for the report. Okay, our next item is an informational item. This is a verbal report on Clean Air Act implementation. Good morning, gentlemen. No, we've been pretty easy on them today, buddy.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good morning. Tim Frankquist, Director of Air Quality Planning. I'm joined by John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science. We'll be providing you with hopefully a brief update here on rules and plans, kind of after we had done our study session to hopefully provide some additional information there. I'm just kind of jumping into, unparalleled air quality challenges. I think, we often start with this slide, and for good reason. I think it does a really great job of illustrating, some of our physical challenges here in the valley. And what that is certainly we have large mountains, a basin, and that traps a lot of our pollution in. In summertime, that causes obviously ozone issues. And then in wintertime, as we all know, it actually causes some PM 2.5 problems. What this doesn't illustrate is that we also have a growing population. So we look to project about 2 million more people in the valley by 2050. So we are a steadily growing area. And then again, we are a goods corridor. So as we can see here from this map, we do get a lot of freight traffic through this area. I think we actually looked at a map yesterday. These really large lines showing a lot of traffic actually extend all the way out to Chicago. So again, out of state, in state, and certainly through the valley. So I-5 and Highway 99 certainly add to a challenge there. So how do we work with the framework of air pollution, and how do all these laws kind of fit together, and what our jurisdiction is? So we always start with the Clean Air Act. So what the Clean Air Act does is establishes 6 criteria pollutants for us in the valley. It's primarily PM 2.5 and ozone. It establishes deadlines and establishes some of the planning requirements around that. The EPA has federal regulations that gets more specifically into what those standards are from a numeric standpoint. Establishes much more detailed planning criteria. They make the attainment determinations, and then they ultimately can enforce the SIP. So it's the key piece to any of these state implementation plans as they become federally enforceable once approved by the EPA. Then where the district and CARB come into play, the district does all the local air quality permitting for stationary sources, does the area source rules. CARB does the mobile source and some area source rules, and then the local district does a lot of the local enforcement. So just in a nutshell, that's kind of the framework. So what are the consequences when we don't meet these standards? Obviously pretty significant. One is really the public health impact. That's first and foremost the most important, but it can also hold up any kind of new air quality permitting for major sources or expansions to those facilities. We can lose highway monies. So in our case, that'd be $4.6 billion of projects that can't go forward. And then in the worst case scenario, the federal government can take over air quality planning. So that's not really a loss of power as much having folks do air quality planning that don't live in the area, don't have the stakeholder relationships. So that becomes a challenge just in itself. So the good news is the district does have a really great track record of taking on these challenges. So the EPA every 5 years has to take a look at these different standards. They typically over the last 10, 15 years have been changing the standards to be more stringent. Again, the district has a fantastic track record of taking on these challenges. So we can see here the multiple standards that have been attained in the valley. And as we attain those standards, we do develop a maintenance plan, and those maintenance plans cover a 20-year period to ensure that we continue to meet those NAAQS criteria for the next 20 years. With that being said, we still do have some challenges ahead of us, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. I think, again, the district has a really tried and true formula on how we take on those challenges. And the first obviously is effective rulemaking. Those are stringent rules, but they're effective rules. A really effective incentives program. We hear a lot about that. I think there's a lot of emission reductions that go there, but you can't do that without great stakeholder relationships. So that's with the local business communities, our agricultural community, and the valley residents. And so we do that in a very transformative formula. We can see here it results in some really significant emission reductions over time. With that, I'll turn it over to John. He'll walk us through some of the air quality trends.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everybody. So at last month's board meeting, Samir gave a verbal update on where we were with air quality through 2025. And we wanted to show a few graphs here in a little more detail to give you a feel of how last year stacked up against previous years. And then I'll share a bit more on how much further we need to go to meet all of the air quality standards. So we'll kick it off here with looking at the air quality index. You're probably familiar with these colors, green being good, red being unhealthy. So if you look at the top bar chart here, we're showing the number of good air quality index days across all of the Valley's counties, starting in the year 2006 on the left and going forward to 2025 on the right. And you can see a general upward progression and more good days occurring over time, which is good to see. But we wanted to point out here that the year 2025, we almost broke the record for the most good days across the Valley's counties. We barely missed it, but still it was a great year. We saw a lot of good days across the entire Valley. But then the even better news is on the unhealthy side. These are the days we don't want to see. 2025 saw a record low number of unhealthy air quality index days across the Valley's counties. Only 5 of those days occurred across Valley counties. Compared, if you look in the past, we used to have over about 200 days or over 200 days throughout the year where we saw unhealthy air quality across the Valley's counties. Now, looking at ozone specifically, we have a long record of ozone measurements in the Valley. The year 2025 was only the second time we've ever had all air monitoring sites below that 84 parts per billion standard. That's the first 8-hour ozone standard that we're working to meet. So that's great that we saw that happen again this last year. We also saw a record low number of days where we exceeded the different 8-hour standards, and there's 3 of them. There's one set at 84 parts per billion, one at 75, one at 70 parts per billion. And for each of those, 2025 saw the lowest number of days where we were above that threshold. So in the chart here, we're also showing over time how this has changed over time, specifically for days over that 84 parts per billion standard, that initial 8-hour standard set by EPA. So going back in time in 2006, we saw 70 calendar days where somewhere in the Valley we exceeded that standard, that health standard. And then going forward in time, the year 2025 only saw 5 days over that standard. That was a record low for us. So really great to see that progress. And then, of course, we also saw 0 days over the 1-hour ozone standard. That's an old standard. We attained that a long time ago, but we're continuing to not see values above that as well. Then shifting to PM 2.5, this is also great to see. We had a lot of really great progress with PM 2.5 in the year 2025. And this was a first for us. This was the first time we've ever seen all of our air monitoring sites be at or below 35.4 microgram standard. For the year 2025. That was a great milestone to see that happen for the first time, and that is showing that we're progressing really well and that we need to keep making that progress to finally attain that. We saw a record low number of days where we exceeded that 35 microgram standard, only 14 days. If you look on the right-hand side, that's where we were for 2025. Then similar for the ozone chart, going back in time, we used to have almost 100 days during the year when we were over that standard, and now it was only 14 for the last calendar year. So significant change for us. And we continue to not see days over the original 24-hour standard of 65 micrograms. We attained that a few years ago, but we're still not seeing values anywhere close to that, which is good that we're continuing that progress. So to give more of a context now of where we used to be versus where we are now, we wanted to show this table here. So this is the official, what's called the design value. This is the official metric that's used to determine whether we're in attainment of a standard. And it's not just a single year number, it's a 3-year average actually for each of these years here. And in that first column there, that orange column, that's the historical peak of where we once were in the past for the San Joaquin Valley. So if we focus on that first row there, the annual PM 2.5 standard, going back in time, our average for the Valley used to be almost 25 micrograms per meter cubed. And then if you look to the right, you can see the progression of the last few years, and all the way on the right for 2025, we're now at 13.8 micrograms per meter cubed. So significant change in that standard. But then similar for the 24-hour standard, going back in time, we used to be at 104 micrograms per meter cubed, and now we're at 41. And the standard we're trying to meet is 35. So we're getting very close to that, which is really exciting to see. And then lastly, for ozone, going back in time, our 8-hour ozone design value used to be 123 parts per billion, and now we are at 87. And that first standard we're trying to meet is 84 parts per billion. So another standard that we're getting really close to meeting. So to show a little better view of spatially how we're doing across the San Joaquin Valley, there'll be 3 charts here, one for each of these types of standards. This is the annual PM 2.5 standard. So if you look all the way on the left-hand side, that's that peak that I just showed on the previous table, about 25 micrograms. That's where we used to be for the San Joaquin Valley. And then the blue bars here show where we are through the year 2025 for each of the air monitoring locations throughout the San Joaquin Valley. So you can see that first standard line, that orange line there, the 1997 standard, that's the 15 microgram standard line. We attained that a couple of years ago with data through 2024. And now with this last year in 2025 looking good, we're getting even lower below that standard line, which is good to see. The next standard line, that gray one, that's the 2012 standard line. That's the 12 microgram standard. You can see that we still have a few areas where we need to keep making progress to get those design values below that standard line, but you can see that most of the valley is already there, already below that standard line. And then finally, that yellow line down there, that's the 2024 standard. That's the 9 microgram standard that EPA set. You can see there's a few areas below there, but more sites need to make more progress. And we know EPA is reconsidering that 9 microgram standard. So we'll see where that goes in the near future. And then similarly, this is for the 24-hour standard. So all the way on the left-hand side, that's where we used to be at 104 micrograms for our 24-hour design value. And then the blue bars here represent where we are through the year 2025. So that first standard line up there is the 1997 standard. That's the 65 microgram standard. We attained that a handful of years ago, and we're well below that now. We're kind of leaving that in the dust behind us. And now we're getting really close to meeting that 2006 standard. That's the 35 microgram standard, that gray line. And you can see we have a few areas where we still need to make a little more progress to get below there, but most of the valley is already there below that standard line. And then finally, here's the ozone chart. So similar setup. So on the left-hand side, this is where we used to be for our peak design value at 123 parts per billion, that red bar. And then through the year 2025, you can see all the different monitoring locations of where we are now. So it's really just a few places where we're trying to get below that 1997 standard line. And then if you look below there, that 2008 standard, we have a few areas already below there. And then the 2015, the most stringent, we have a few areas as well, but we need to keep making progress. So we wanted to show this to show you how far we've come through our planning work, how much has changed here in the valley with the effort that we're making, but then also show that we still have more work to do. There are still more areas that need to have more progress to get all of the valley below these different thresholds. And with that, I'll hand it over to Tim to talk about the current planning issues that we are currently facing.
So along with the great news on the 1 hour standard, we did get final approval of our maintenance plan to cover this planning period. So great news there. It does remove the section 185 permitting fees. Also part of that decision was a determination that we did fail to attain the 84 parts per billion standard, the 1997 standard. So that actually re-triggers the 185 fees for those sources. Because that's a revoke standard, there's not a new attainment plan that needs to go in, but to ensure that you don't backslide on that standard, it does still require the triggering of a contingency measure. In this case, it's the CARB contingency measure, the smog check. And so what that will do come January 1st of 2027 for vehicles that were exempted at 8 years and newer, now it'll be 7 years and newer that will all be subject to the smog check. And then some really great news that we had in January, we did get final a determination by the EPA that we did attain the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard. So really great news there, and just a really great evidence that we can take on these challenges. In that vein of some challenges, so we do still have some contemporary issues that are in front of us. We've talked several times about the waivers and the impacts to the emission waivers. That's still there with us, as we can see with the 2 plans below here, the 2022 ozone plan and the 2024 plan. Those plans did rely heavily on emission reductions from those waivers. So just to kind of recap is why is that so important in the valley? We can see in here in the graphic that 80% of our NOx emissions actually come from mobile sources. So for the most part, those sources are outside of district control. CARB does have some control through the waiver authority, and then obviously the federal government has substantial control over the sources. But under the section 209B authority, CARB can put in those waivers for certain mobile source categories. They had done that. So they had withdrawn some this past winter, or they had had those disapproved through a congressional act. The culmination of that is we have a pretty significant shortfall on both those plans as a result. So we'll kind of go through a few of these plans and talk about how they impacted each one of these. So for the 2018 PM 2.5 plan, this was a really comprehensive plan that covered multiple different PM 2.5 standards. For the most part, as we talked about the 1997, we attained that standard, so that's really great news there. With the 2006 standard, there was a court case that changed basically the EPA's decision on approving that plan and bumped it back. It made the attainment date, I would say, unknown necessarily. And so what we're looking at is at some point with this pending litigation, EPA is going to have to make a finding of attainment or non-attainment. If that's the case, it will likely result in what's referred to as a 189D plan or a 5% plan. And what that requires is an annual reduction of 5% of your PM 2.5 emissions or precursor emissions. And you have to do that annually until you attain the standard. The Clean Air Act says 5 years. You can get up to 10 years, but it has to be a pretty quick turnaround. In this case too, and we'll talk a little bit about the black box, there is no black box for this, so we can't figure out later on down the road what those issues are. We have to come up with those emission reductions today. In terms of the 2024 plan, so these are ones that would be much more significantly impacted by the CARB waivers. We did submit this plan in 2024. Again, a very comprehensive plan, had a lot of stationary source and mobile source measures in there. As part of this plan, we also did request a 5-year extension, which is allowed under the Clean Air Act if certain criteria is met. We still believe that this criteria is met even with the impacts of the emission waivers, and so we're working closely with CARB and the EPA to advance that argument. But again, the 5-year extension is absolutely critical. This would have kicked out the deadline to 2030. If we don't get this extension request, the actual deadline for attainment was this past December. And so it's really critical that we continue to work with the EPA and drive this to done. Similar issues here on the 2022 plan. Again, a very comprehensive plan that had a lot of stationary source and mobile source measures as part of that. There is a pending lawsuit that the EPA does have to make a decision on this by July 17, 2026. And this consent decree requires them to make a final decision. So pretty short turnaround. We have to figure out pretty quickly what those emission reductions are. In the case of ozone and extreme area, you do have what's referred to the black box. So you can put emission reductions in that black box, which looks to be part of that plan, but the turnaround's still quick. CARB would have to have a plan in front of their board in May, and this will be turned around by June to hit this EPA deadline. And then just lastly, as these kind of dominoes impact each piece of the puzzle, part of our plans have a transportation conformity component to that. And what this is that any transportation project that the municipal plan organizations do cannot cause or contribute a violation to air quality. So some of these projects reduce congestion, those actually help air quality. Some increase flow on a road that could actually increase air quality or increase pollution. The motor vehicle emission budget is the metric that's developed by CARB to ensure that we don't go over those standards. Because of those emission waivers, that headroom, if you will, had gotten shrunk, and in some cases, it's going to be extremely challenging going forward. So the issue there is that billions and billions of dollars are on the line if those projects can't get moved forward or delayed or canceled. So in terms of how we take on kind of the upcoming challenges, as we presented before, we want to look at a multifaceted focused technology neutral strategy that way targets high emitting vehicles near zero or in the future, supporting zero or near zero now and then today. What that would do address our shortfalls, hopefully with the emission waiver issues, and then ultimately lies a good foundation for how we achieve compliance with these standards and then meet our public health goals. And then just we presented, I think, during the study session, again, what are some of the really great programs out there? I don't think we can say enough about the farmer program. These are SIP credible programs. There's a line out the door for these applications. Unfortunately, this didn't get funded this year. There are substantial emission reductions that are associated with this program, and we certainly will want to advocate hard for. Same on heavy duty trucks. As we saw, we get a lot of the traffic there. So those grant programs are fantastic for helping reduce air pollution, locomotives, zero emission forklifts. A host of different EV and EV infrastructure type programs. Of course, the Ag Burn Alternatives Program is another very substantial and important program here, and then the wood stove change out. So we have some really great grant programs that can result in excellent emission reductions, and in many cases, SIP credible. So it really just comes down to additional funding, or in some cases, actually funding those programs. So with that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Supervisor McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at some of the historical air quality data, generally speaking, wildfire emissions, those are pulled out of that data that we're looking at when we're meeting our daily standards. Is that correct?
In the data we showed in these charts, this includes all data actually. So even if there's wildfire impacts, this is everything.
So when we're looking at 2020, that's the cause for the spike.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I was just curious about that. I wasn't sure what the causation there. So thank you, appreciate it.
Mayor Pro Tem Reyna.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, I was chewing on something. I want to speak about, well, this is great. I mean, the progress that this body has done on air quality is extremely successful. It's been very good. But I want to speak about those that suffer from asthma, because even though we have achieved this level of air quality, I'll tell you about a niece of mine. She's my eldest niece. About 2 weeks ago, she had an attack of asthma and she suffered respiratory failure. She was taken by ambulance to a hospital in Madera. That's where she lives, in Madera. And she was told after she got better that if she had not been to that hospital, to that specific hospital, she would have passed away from her respiratory failure. So let's not lose sight that we need to continue to work on getting the air better, not for just the general public, but for everyone, because this to me just brings it home as to how people that suffer from asthma suffer greatly and are at the risk of death because of air pollution. Thank you. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Gilberto. Okay, Dr. Warner. Dr. Warner.
Yes, thank you, Tim, for that fantastic breakdown. Just as a comment in terms of the presentation, I think it's really helpful for us to, as you're presenting the, like where we are in attainment and non-attainment on the later slides, to also sort of have the connection back to the values that you presented earlier, so we kind of know where we're at and like flipping back and forth. Nevertheless, I do love these graphs because they help us understand where we have persistent issues. So one, we do hope to see good news from EPA and continuing to see, partnership. And I do think that it's important for all the board members and the public to know how much of this process depends on constant communication, and that the district really strives to keep an open communication, constant communication with EPA and certainly CARB, of course, but EPA as well. So thank you for that, because that doesn't go unnoticed, that that's part of what makes this happen. So we do continue on a number of different values that we are non-attainment. We continue to see the issues in Kern, right? And we know that, one of the monitoring stations there, is problematic, but there are others, right, that are still an issue. And so I guess for us, as we think about not just incentives, but our policy platform, what are opportunities that you see in terms of that? Because we do, yes, we have to continue doing the mobile source. We have to continue pushing both the federal and the state. I don't think the federal gets a break with their responsibilities right now either. But how do we think through about those particular places, policy and incentives wise? And I have another question after that, but I just want to kind of get your sense on that.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just a response. First, just want to appreciate the comments around engagement and just amplify that a bit more as to why we want to continue bringing these updates to the board on a regular basis, because these issues are critical to the Valley, and it's really important for the board and the public to be well aware of how these various state implementation plans are being reviewed and sort of what the updated status of that is. So just want to acknowledge that and just agree that that's absolutely critical to this process. It's that level of communication, interagency, but also amongst the board, certainly with the board, keeping you up to speed as well as the public up to speed. I think, as far as, where do we go from here, particularly in those areas of the valley that have the most difficult challenges, there are things that are issues that are shared and issues that are also kind of unique depending on whether you're talking about ozone or PM 2.5. You may have noticed, for example, that one of our peak sites for ozone right now is Ash Mountain, which is actually a higher elevation, not population really around it, although not too far down the road. So we actually have some really unique things that are going on. And actually, as a site that historically always been pretty high for ozone, maybe not as high as others, and as others have dropped, it's sort of remained high. So if that makes sense, just given its sort of unique elevation. So I think there are going to be some really important conversations to be had as we think about the next generation of plans and what are the things that we can all be thinking about at the local, state, and federal level. I mean, clearly the working together with the state and the federal governments in the past to continue reducing mobile source emissions, to continue reducing area source emissions, stationary source emissions is proving out. You can see that in the data that when we invest in feasible, cost-effective solutions, there's a commensurate benefit to air quality. And I think that's the moment that we're in right now. So even though there have been challenges, for example, at the federal level, state level, with some of the different mobile source measures, the variety of things that have been going on there are opportunities. And, for example, we're going through a budgeting process right now at the state level where you just heard earlier, we have a $700 million backlog in the ag equipment replacement program. If the state was serious about dealing with that issue, there would be a concerted effort to fund what is the most cost-effective program in the state. You will get benefits. There are plenty of projects in Kern County. You'll get a lot of benefits in Kern County. And they're also impacted by other parts of the valley, in terms of transport within the valley. So anything upwind of Kern County and you get emissions reductions there, you also get benefits in Kern County. So there are feasible things that can be done, especially when enough legislators and the governor can working with us, of course, can agree, that it's a priority to continue making progress even with the setbacks that we've seen. And I do think that the science is really important too. There's quite a bit of research that continues to be conducted. The role that wildfires play, the role that increasing prescribed burning may play. What is the mix of PM 2.5 today as compared to where it was before? And really just honing in on the science so that we can keep focusing in on everything that we have jurisdiction over. And sometimes you're talking about restaurants in many cases. And what do you do about is very, very difficult, sort of category to work with. We've had a lot of success in many ways, but there's also still quite a bit of remaining challenge. Residential wood burning, we're already at the most stringent. What's the next step with that? The continued work on different stationary sources, that doesn't stop. We keep looking at new technology, but those emissions have been reduced very, very significantly over the years. And I would say most importantly, where does the state go from here in terms of the mobile source strategy? What's the response? Everything from trucking to off-road equipment. There was a concern raised earlier on the inspection and maintenance and the implementation of that. We have to make sure we just come up with the next generation of strategy that will continue moving the ball forward. And we are at that moment right now. And there's a lot of conversations that are happening about that. So that's the long way of basically saying, that there are near-term opportunities right now that we can all invest in, but there is going to have to be a lot of brainstorming as well, using the latest science, investing in the science, and then thinking about what's next across all these different categories.
Yeah, and I think that, and thank you for bringing up the science, because that was part of my second question, because I do think that part of making the case, right, is understanding what is that PM makeup, just talking about the PM, for example, in Kern, right? What are we talking about? Because if it is mobile sources and if it is the 5, all the more reason why the limited funds that we have right now for infrastructure for cleaner vehicles needs to come to the valley, right? And so I do think that part of understanding that a little bit more, and or as granular as we can get, with obviously the challenges, but I do think it's important on a policy level too, not just a science level, for us to understand how we can start really advocating for the continuing priority of those funds. Because I will tell you right now that, for NOx, for PM, and thinking about the mobile source incentives and funding that is available, the valley's not on the radar, right? Because of the cost effectiveness. And if we can really make the case that what we're struggling with as a state, which is the San Joaquin Valley's plan is chief among them, and the issue is the mobile sources there, I will bring that up at every single meeting I have the opportunity, which, yeah, I already do it. Yeah, now, in terms of the science piece, I know we had a conversation at the last update about the ozone piece and really trying to understand the ozone because, and Tim, others, correct me if I'm wrong, but that only seems like it's going to be more challenging, not less challenging as we, last year we had a sort of a reprieve on the extreme heat events, but what opportunities could we be seeking that to both understand the science? So like if there's any updates on the science piece since our last meeting, and then also any additional strategies from the ones that you've already mentioned that we should be thinking about.
I can share a thought, and then Tim and John, I think, can both, through the chair, please add or perhaps subtract if I, but we obviously brainstormed this, quite a bit. This is one of the most important roles of the agency is really supporting that strong policy-oriented science. And for ozone, I just wanted to give you a little bit more flavor as to sort of what we think is happening with ozone. We've seen tremendous progress. In fact, the science and the strategies that we've developed in the Valley, this goes back over 20 years, we're basically on track with relative to what we thought we would see happen. We still do have 2 sites that are, we're having some challenge with. But overall, we're seeing a substantial reduction far beyond even what other regions there's some that are not seeing, the same result, although there's been substantial progress statewide as well, but we've seen a really significant reduction, and it's really NOx driven. That is what we used to see, with the earliest science that we saw in ozone, and we continue to see that reducing NOx emissions is just critical to achieving those ozone benefits. Now, there are some things that, I think we are trying to take a closer look at. I mentioned Ash Mountain, which is at an elevation, that just is sort of a sweet spot, for absorbing, some of the ozone that's generated either on the valley floor, but also with the biogenic, basically some of the emissions that actually occur up in the forest, like from the trees themselves and some of the natural reactions that happen up there. You kind of get this perfect elevation, that sees a pretty consistent, fairly high kind of ozone impact up there. And that's something that there's just a historical site that's been there and one that we'll have to deal with over time in terms of how can we actually, control emissions enough to bring that site. It is close though, but so it is working. And then you have this site in Kern County, the Edison site, which is operated by the California Air Resources Board, that is sort of at the edge there of, on the east side of Bakersfield, kind of bordering up, getting close to the foothills there. And I think we will have to study that, even closer over time to really understand, it was declining, rapidly, and then sort of saw a little bit of an uptick, and now it's declining again. So there's been some, the valley is, as much as it appears to just be this large sort of valley with airflow that generally goes from one end to the other, there are unique things that can happen kind of within the valley. And so I think it is important to really understand. All the other sites across the valley, have basically seen just that steep, very consistent decline over time. You are seeing introduction of more emissions into the valley, from wildfires. You're seeing more introduction of emissions into the valley from prescribed burning activities, not just adjacent, but those will transport their way down. And those are, we're trying to figure out also a better way to quantify those impacts so that we just know what we're up against. And with that, you can then figure out, okay, well, what do you focus on to try to achieve those benefits? So there's a lot of priority areas in terms of where the research can help us. There's actually a big study that CARB is working on right now that we're interacting on. We're trying to glean as much information as possible. It's a PM 2.5 speciation study with a lot of focus in the Valley, in Fresno and Bakersfield, So we are looking at that right now. We hope to have CARB at some point report on, whatever the key findings are on that. So I think there is quite a bit of work going on to try to get a better handle on where things are both for ozone and PM. But I don't know if you want to add more to that, John.
Yeah, just to
The chair.
add to just some of the context of the ozone improvements we've seen compared to 15, 20 years ago, we would see kind of gradual improvements, but as time has gone on, those improvements are happening quicker and quicker because it's really driven by both NOx and VOC drive ozone formation. But as NOx levels have dropped below VOC levels, now NOx is even more of a limiting precursor. So it's even more effective in reducing ozone. So as we keep getting NOx reductions, we're seeing ozone levels decrease more rapidly than we have the past few years than we did 15, 20 years ago. So that's been a positive observation that we expected to see happen, and we have been seeing that happen.
Thank you. And I'm sure Dr. Sheriffs will speak to the public health thing, but on the ozone piece. But for me, I do think it is important for folks to know that we talk about PM a lot and its impact, and certainly it is important, but ozone is really, really impactful. And as someone who has family members and my son with asthma, you see it immediately. And so it is a continual priority, I think, so on the public health front, to continue making progress. So thank you for all that you guys are doing to make progress on that.
Thank you. Pressure's on, Dr. Sheriff. There's expectations now.
Yikes. Yeah, the graphs are so impressive in terms of the work that's been accomplished. Because looking back, those historic levels, if you spent your life in the valley breathing those historic levels, you shortened your life expectancy by 2 years. That is huge. So this is extraordinary progress, commendable progress. We got there through collaboration at all kinds of levels, with businesses, with the public, with CARB, with EPA, with the federal government doing their part in terms of mobile source and supporting California in the waiver process. These are incredibly challenging times. And I really appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Rainia's comments reminding us, well, there's that huge progress, but there's still individual, and particularly in the asthma front, the ozone issue. We cannot go back, and we really need to continue to move forward. It's great to hear your optimism. And looking at the staff, I think, well, why not? Look, we've accomplished so much. But boy, these are challenging times like no others. This district doesn't control mobile. CARB's hands have been tied in many ways in terms of their impact on mobile. And the Fed is relaxing emission standards. This is not good for our futures in the Valley. We need to be persistent. We need to collaborate. Again, I look around the room at the people we've got here and I think, well, these are incredibly creative, dedicated people, very knowledgeable. So I remain optimistic, but I also worry a lot about what the next few years are going to look like, and where we're going to find, because we've been told in the past that, looking at the chart on the wall, what's left is mobile, mainly not in our control. And that's going to be very hard to accomplish without finding collaboration at the federal level over the next couple of years. So, thank you.
Yeah, the future is concerning, but I just want to take a pause and just reflect on the accomplishments of staff. I mean, those graphs to me say it all. You look at what you've achieved with PM 2.5, you look at what you've achieved with ozone. It's phenomenal. I mean, as a child, I couldn't see the mountains very often. And now I can see them quite frequently. Plus, I do have asthma. And it's much easier for me to breathe these days. And then I thank you on the fact that I have a 9-year-old. And so the fact that he doesn't have to breathe what I did all those years, I'm appreciative. So yes, the future, we certainly have to be vigilant and a lot of brainstorming and a lot of hard work. But I do want to praise staff for all this. This is phenomenal what you've done. And also you did it with business, not fighting business. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions. I do. It's come up a couple of times, a farmer program, and I know Supervisor Mendez asked about how much was in the queue. How much do we typically is allocated for that in the state budget? Is it?
Yeah, we've seen through the chair, at a peak of about 150 million per year.
Okay.
It's fluctuated depending on individual state budgets, but
Right.
it's been a heavily funded program because of the demand, and because basically it's zero so far this year in the proposed budget, although this year is still not over. Last year was zero, and the year before that was 2 million statewide. So this would be or could be the third year, that essentially it's zeroed out if we don't have some new energy kind of in that space. It's a big advocacy effort, and a lot of these types of programs are starting at zero. I think this year, I think that there's very little in the budget in terms of there was a 200 million line item for light duty ZEV deployment, and there was some funding in there for 617. It was a continuous appropriation. But other than that, though, so I think everybody now is working on clean air priorities, is trying to get some money in the budget. We are optimistic. There's a lot of energy, but it's also, I'm sure the board has seen a lot of the news around the structural deficit in California and some of the challenges with funding. So we try not to, we obviously understand that, but to the extent that priorities are developed in terms of where the expenditures need to go, given the public health issues, number one, and then also given the economic issues around the sanctions, the transportation funding that Tim mentioned, the 4.6 billion. There's a lot of different reasons why the state really should be investing in things that help us move the ball forward, help us with our plans being approvable. So I think the case is there to be made, even in a bad budget year. And so that's the message that we're taking to Sacramento. And there's a lot of folks statewide that are also supporting that request. And I do want to make sure, I think there's certainly optimism in terms of, the validation that achieving reductions collaboratively results in air quality. I think that there is optimism that works. I think that there definitely is a lot of concern here with the staff around how challenging it is going to be to meet these standards, kind of looking ahead, the remaining standards that we have, and actually have plans that are ultimately able to quantify all the reductions that are needed by the dates that are required. The Clean Air Act is very specific. You have to meet, there's attainment timeframes that have to be met. It was already challenging enough as it was before some of the most recent issues. Now it's even more challenging. So this is really a key moment for the state actually to think about this and to work with us and really develop a strategy that does really focus in on those near-term reductions, while also obviously working on the transformational. There's infrastructure. There's a lot of things that we can do at the same time. We've really been pushing that message because it's a critical moment in the journey of here with the Valley. And I don't want to be pessimistic here, but it will be very, very difficult. I don't want to use the word impossible, but it's very difficult to meet these standards if the state doesn't focus in on these cost-effective reductions.
Right. Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair Shiklian. I know that I'm fairly new here, and when I hear of how our district is a public health agency, it begs to ask the question, if and that's only a question, but maybe a comment, but if the productive means of what we do as an ag community. And I say this because a lot of the particulate matters we've identified in the last report is diesel. And we're incentivizing these funds to offset the air quality. I look at what this valley has, what it's done, right? And we're feeding the world. That's always the concept that I hear. We're feeding the world. But are we feeding the world at the expense of our valley? Because a lot of the production requires infrastructure to be able to get product from here to there. Not trying to poke the bear in any way. I'm just trying to find out how we as a public health agency, are we attaching these incentives with this farm program to try to reduce that footprint? Meaning, if you produce local, then that doesn't require excessive ports. It doesn't require excessive transportation through corridors. Is there an accountability when it comes to that? Do we try to push for that? Again, I'm not trying to say how the ag industry is going to do their business. Obviously, they know how to do that. But as a public health agency, are we adding those accountable measures when we provide these funds? Now, that could be an argument, and I'm sure the ag industry can certainly say something different, but I'm trying to look out for the benefit of our valley. And an analogy could be, we want these big retail stores to come here. They pay very small amount of wages. So the offload then to take care of their health risk goes on to the local governments and the state itself. No different in what we do here. So I'm trying to articulate it in a way that says, as a public health agency, are we doing enough in making sure that these measures that we put with these funds that we provide to these huge emission contributors, do we add that component that says, if you reduce emissions by this much, here's additional money because you're reducing the footprint of the total emissions. I know that's a lot to say, but I think over the comments that I heard, not only from Dr. Pacheco and Dr. Sheriffs, I think it's an important question to ask. And I figured this would be the opportunity to do so while you're providing the reports. Thank
Through
you,
the chair,
Madam.
I'm happy to respond, or if any, I'm not sure if that question was to staff or to the board or general esoteric question, but I'm happy to provide some feedback on that. You know, first of all, you know, the board doesn't have the authority, and it's never been a goal of the board, nor is there authority to dictate, you know, what industries you know, operate, or I think there's broader kind of questions around that, you know, related to city, county roles, land use, state goals. But you know, I think the question around the you know, what do we do to work with agriculture to reduce emissions? So for example, the incentives that you're talking about, when we provide incentives, say to replace a tractor, the contract, the handshake with a grower in that case would be, you put in your funds, we put in some funds, you have to replace your tractor, your old tractor, with a new Tier 4, you know, final tractor or other piece of equipment. In many cases, it's electric, utility terrain vehicle. You're under contract to do it. You have to report for a number of years. And so you are actually basically committing legally to a legally binding process that you're going to not only replace your tractor, we verify that it's, you know, destroyed, the new one's put in service, and you actually have to report to us over a multi-year period. There's accountability in terms of, you know, whatever we're hoping to see with that project, we actually follow through and make sure that it gets delivered on. There's accountability, and if it doesn't happen, it's a legally binding process. So I think the specific kind of project to project funding that we do, every single project that we deploy is one that has accountability to it and make sure that we get the intended air pollution benefit, you know, from the program. But in addition to that, I just wanted to say there's a broader kind of picture here, which is that we've been working with agriculture for over, well, decades now to look at a variety of different things, to not just agriculture, but all the sectors that we have any sort of authority over, or even when we don't have authority. You know, we talk about these incentive programs. You know, the board, you know, we don't actually have to do any of this really when you think about it. Obviously, as a public health agency, we're interested in fighting for state farmer funds, but at the end of the day, it's really actually reducing a state regulated category of emissions. We're just proactive, want to be very active in and trying to work with them to work on that category because we know it's important to air pollution and public health. So but there are regulatory things. There's a wide range of regulations that we've implemented, whether it's conservation management practices to reduce dust, on-field activities, engine regulations to require the replacement of irrigation pumps across the valley, regulations for dairies that require manure management, silage, and other practices to reduce volatile organic compounds and dust, corral management. There's a long list of different things that we've done to work in partnership with agriculture. It's just one of many sectors to try to reduce. Those are regulatory approaches. There's incentive-based approaches for like the tractor replacement program is one example of that. And all of that, has provided, significant benefits and it's ongoing. We keep looking at, new technology for harvesting, for example, in the nut crop sector. I mean, there's a lot more to be done in thinking about those issues. So I think it's probably the broader question that you're raising. And that is an active, process in terms of, how do we keep working with them and other sectors to reduce air pollution. The phase out of open burning, there isn't a single region in the entire world actually who's done anything like we've done in the San Joaquin Valley to now no longer allow the open burning of these materials in the ag sector. And that's, unique within California, the only region to do that. It's just another example of where, when we can develop a feasible strategy. And that's a very difficult one, by the way, I have to say, going into this first year now. The last year was the first full year of the final phase out being put in place. It's a very, very difficult strategy. It's an ongoing, you've probably heard about the 50,000 acres of vineyards that are being pulled probably here in the next year or so. A lot of that's already been pulled. So there's a lot of challenges and, very real challenges to deal with there. Sigma implementation is fouling many lands. There's a lot of issues around that. We talked about that during the study session. So I think you bring up a very important point, but is one that's complex and is multifaceted. It's going to require, quite a bit of conversations in the coming years to keep moving that in a positive direction.
Thank you, Samir. And as I grow into my position here in the seat, I only expect that from you, your staff, and the rest of my colleagues to kind of fill me in. But I do appreciate everything that this has done, your staff. So thank you for answering that question.
Supervisor Robinson?
Just to talk to a component of that, business and ag appreciate the carrot, not the stick. And I think that's what you've done and what you've shown. When folks lose their job, their health declines rapidly. So yes, your health declines if you have bad air. Your health also declines if you don't have a job. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no more questions, we will move on. This was not an action item, but I will open it up for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Bakersfield, do you have any members of the public that would like to comment on this?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Okay. Fresno, do we have any members? I
No.
do see somebody coming
I
to
was
the
back
podium.
there chomping at the bit.
Good morning, Manuel Cunha, Nisei Farmers. First, 1990, we wrote the waiver. 1973, the waiver became real for the country, the US EPA waiver. 2090, the famous 2090, under Leon Panetta, Rick Lehman, Gary Condit, and a group of people. And that was to protect so that states wouldn't go outside of their authority to regulate manufacturers of equipment. In 2004, Dave Crow came to us. The Air District came to us in 1999 or 1990. We got to regulate agriculture based on science and facts. Okay, so we had the Seacoast study agency formed, all those great things. When we did the 2004 pump engines, ag ice, ag could have said, no way. Go get a waiver, CARB. Go get a waiver. And it would be denied. I'll guarantee it would have been denied. We never went that route. Ag sat with the district, and to this day, we're the only industry that stepped up with reducing emissions from vehicles, in this case, off-road tractors. And the only air district in the valley, in the state, that has this many, 17,000, 19,000 tractors replaced. but all with not directives telling us you will do this or such. No, it was a collaborative effort. We did not pursue the waiver position against CARB because they came and we sat at the table. So ag has been doing its part compared to anybody else. Ag burn is a big hit on my farmers, and especially when we were promised the money for 5 years. And now we're screwed. If it wasn't for the district and finding funds with the board, my farmers couldn't chip and spread a lot of stuff. $2 million, but I could spend, again, a lousy $1 billion for a stupid train that does nothing for air quality except more dust and more problems and more destruction to farmland that's left abandoned with disease. So real problems there. And if this governor really believed in air quality, he would do what I think Dr. Pacheco, you said. Let's take care of the valley, which has those issues, and let's get the people and the community. But no, he has no care for air quality. That's me. And my farmers feel that way as well. If it wasn't for the district and you board with the incentives, with USDA, we wouldn't have that reduction. So thank you, Councilman. Absolutely. You know, ag has been there, and we will be there to protect our farm communities and our farm workers all the way. And we'll work with the district on doing voluntary things versus AK-47. So thank you.
Thank you, Manuel.
Do we have any other public comments in Fresno? Seeing none, there is an online comment. Christian Bisher.
Good morning, Christian.
Thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to make sure Councilmember Rodriguez's comment went validated. There are a large amount of people that would agree with you. While agriculture is important in the valley, public health has been compromised when it comes to agriculture. Ag first in the valley, 100%. So Councilmember Rodriguez, thank you for your comments. And I look forward to connecting with you and talking to you a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, see no further online comments.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Okay, our next item, number 9, is to appoint an ad hoc budget committee.
Thank you.
Nobody's
happy to, yeah, let me see if I can help you with this, Chair.
Absolutely.
Just give you a little bit of quick background, just starting with the budget, just high level budget requirements and budget process. Under the Health and Safety Code, there are requirements around how the district adopts its budget under 48131. There's a public hearing that must be held to allow public comments on the budget exclusively for the purpose of providing public comments on the budget. That's actually scheduled for May 21st. There's also a requirement that summary budget information be made available at least 30 days before that May hearing. There's a requirement in the Health and Safety Code that the district must notify each person subject to fees that were imposed in the preceding year about the availability of that budget summary information. And there's also a second hearing where the board will adopt the budget that's scheduled currently for June 18th. There's also administrative code here that the board's adopted requirements where the APCO must present the budget, the recommended budget to the board by June 30th. That's our fiscal cycle. Additionally, one of the policies that the board has adopted and put in place is having an ad hoc budget subcommittee that's formed to review the budget in detail, provide suggestions, weigh in, and make a recommendation ultimately to the board before the formal budget hearings. So the first budget presentation will be made to that ad hoc board budget subcommittee where that input will be gathered. And the purpose of this item is to have you, Chair, basically appoint 6 members to serve on that ad hoc subcommittee, which we'd expect to convene in late March or early April, just depending on board member availability. It's a one-time meeting, several hours of one-time meeting. And as you think about volunteers for this subcommittee, just wanted to remind the board here about who was on the subcommittee last year. So the chair Shuplian appointed, well, the chair was on the subcommittee, Council Member Escudia Brayton, Supervisor Rickman, Vice Chair McCauley, Dr. Pacheco Werner, and Supervisor Mendes were the members that were on the subcommittee last year. So with that, turn it back to the, well, I'm sure you want to mention that or not, but.
So I will start with volunteers. Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. Yes. Well, being a new member, I think it's vital that you are a part of that because you really learn a lot. I appreciate that. Is it? Okay. So that's 2.
I'm willing to do it.
I again will step up as chair and be a part of that. So there's 3. What's that?
Watts paint dry.
Well, since this is your last budget, you know, you did. Yeah, let's see. Do we have anybody from the north or south? No, this is, it's a zoo, it's a
hybrid virtual.
Yeah, it's a hybrid,
yeah,
yes.
Okay, so.
Madam Chair, this is Gilbert Reyna. I would be willing to serve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Morena. Appreciate that. Vito, did you have something to say?
Yes, member Escutia Braden said she would be willing to serve.
I am.
I knew she would.
Team player.
Right?
Take it for the northern team.
So how many is that?
I think it's 5
5?
total.
Who do I have as Dr. Sheriffs? Councilwoman Wynn isn't here. Maybe we should put her on there. But she did tell me she was watching earlier, so sorry. Sorry, Liz, but you're in.
All right.
That's 6.
Chair prerogative.
We're good?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. And that's late March, you said?
We try to shoot for late March or early April. And again, we'll pull for availability and land.
I should be able to. I'm having a knee replacement on March 5th. So we'll see. As long as I don't have to run anywhere, I'm good. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we will move on to our next item, which is a verbal report on CARB activities.
Yeah, so I know that when we last met, we had talked about a joint event with CARB and the ag community in the air district. That was postponed, but thank you to all the partners for rescheduling that. So I really appreciate that because I do think it's helpful anytime CARB staff and board members, aside from me, can come to the Valley. So thank you. So that is, I believe that's moving forward for a new date. So some of you might get an email about that. I will also note that we do continue with rulemaking this year. There's quite a few things on the docket, and as always, for board members, if there's anything that you or your community members have questions about, please see me as a resource, especially as some of these things come to be implemented this year. So thank you.
All right, thank you for the update. And we will now move on to executive director comments.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things really quick here. Just want to start off first by congratulating with a slight conditional to that Dr. Pacheco Warner's reappointment to the board that just came out in the last week or so from the governor's office. Maybe a round of applause. Perfect. Say conditional because there's still a Senate confirmation that has to happen, but it, basically, Dr. Pacheco Warner has been reappointed pending that Senate confirmation. So I just wanted to share that great news. Also wanted to thank Dr. Pacheco Warner, Chair Shuklian, maybe others, but the board members that I'm aware of at least that went to the Ag Show. We had staff, we had a booth there. They dropped by, visited the booth, and we're out there just representing and just doing a great job at, as always, at supporting, that really cool process down there, just looking at technology and just thinking about what's next in terms of more efficient and cleaner ag technology. So it was a great opportunity for our staff as well to see what's out there and keep leveraging those opportunities when we think about our strategies here. Also want to just acknowledge and similar to what Dr. Pacheco Warner said, the work that's going on to support trying to bring some key CARB folks and legislators down to the Valley to see some of the great work that's going on with the tractor replacement program, as well as some of the other technology deployments that we do. So I appreciate the work behind the scenes there on the CARB team, as well as from the ag community itself, who I know has been working hard to help facilitate these opportunities for folks to see some of these various efforts that are going on. Thank you.
That's it?
Yep.
All right. Thank you to the staff for being there. A lot of great information. The time that I was there and walking around, I saw a lot of folks interested and talking to staff. And so I appreciate that. Which day were you there?
Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Dr. Sheriffs.
Thank you. I will be brief. I know we all want to get to our mid-morning snack. And this is building off of an item we talked about earlier this morning in regards to the 2022 climate heat impact response. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about heat, because heat is in fact the #1 weather health hazard. And that's hard to appreciate in our current weather. It's hard to appreciate in general because much of the health damage of heat, I don't remember ever signing a death certificate that said died of heat, although people do die directly of heat exhaustion and hyperthermia. But most of the deaths are because of the impact of heat on another condition, somebody's heart condition, their pulmonary condition. And the folks who are most at risk of heat are the same people we're familiar with in terms of most at risk for the air quality issues. It's kids, it's older adults, it's people with pre-existing health conditions, it's pregnant people, heat particularly outdoor workers. So it's a familiar group for us. The 2022 heat crisis in September was credited with killing 395 Californians, the death of 395 Californians. The 20 deadliest wildfires in California from 1933 to 2024 killed a total of 312 people. So this one 10-day heat event, more people died than have died in wildfires since 1933. So again, it's hidden, but it is absolutely real. It's absolutely important. Because of climate change, we're seeing more exposure to wildfire smoke. We will be seeing much more exposure to extreme heat. And the state insurance department studies suggested that in fact, heat events from 2013 to 2022 probably killed order of magnitude 500 to 4,000 people. And they're estimating that by 2050, heat will probably be killing 10,000 Californians every year. And I always hear a number like 10,000. I think, well, motor vehicle accidents. I think that's kind of a good standard because it tells us, well, that's something we get excited about. Well, motor vehicle accidents kill 40,000 Americans a year. And we're talking by mid-century, 10,000 Californians every year as a result of heat impacts. So I don't have any solutions today. This is a heat alert. You know, we're facing increased wildfire smoke exposure. We're facing increased extreme heat exposure. These are not NACs, but they are increasing public health challenges that we will be facing and need to be aware of and thinking about. So thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Yeah, buddy. Sure.
You know, we were talking about, you know, living here in the valley and people forget history. They don't want to know it. They don't want to pay attention to it. Well, when the early Spanish came to California and they came to the southern part of the San Joaquin Valley, they described it as a smoke-filled, mosquito-infested hellhole. And they stayed away. So we need to remember this was kind of where we started. And it kind of changed over the years. First changed for the better because we control the mosquitoes to a certain extent. And then it changed for the worse, probably between 1960 and probably 1990. And then it's gotten better again. I just want to, people sometimes need to look back at history because they always seem to forget it, then they repeat it again. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. All right. With those words, we will adjourn this meeting and we will be back on March 19th. Hopefully, I'll be here. I see a ramp over there, so that's good. Thank you, folks. Yeah.